In tonight's primetime focus, I want to tell you about a phone call. Last June, a businessman named Paolo Zampoli was in a messy custody battle with his ex-girlfriend. Luckily for Paolo, he introduced Donald Trump to his current wife, Melania Trump, so he has some friends in high places. So when Paolo's ex-girlfriend was arrested in Miami, the New York Times, citing records they obtained and a person familiar with the communications, said that he put in a call to a senior official at ICE. And that ICE official then put in a call to the Miami field office and explained this matter was, quote, important to someone close to the White House. After that call, his ex-girlfriend was taken to a detention center and eventually sent to Brazil. DHS has denied that this case involved any favors. On Tuesday, the Trump administration named the man on the other end of that phone call, David Venturella, the acting director of ICE. So who is he? Venturella spent more than 2 decades of his life in immigration enforcement, including at ICE. In 2012, he left to work for a private prison company called GEO Group. That company holds about a third of America's immigration detainees under contract to ICE. And GEO Group has been doing mighty well for itself in President Trump's second term. A nearly 700% increase in net income for 2025 compared to the year before. The man who left ICE to work for one of its clients is now back, running the agency that funds those private prison checks. We like to think the line between government policy and private profiteering is, well, ideally clear and wide. But this is looking a lot more like a revolving door. Enforce, make money, return, repeat. And joining us now is Veronica Cardenas, former assistant chief counsel at ICE, as well as the CEO and founder of Humanigration. Veronica, it's great to have you back here on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So you spent over a decade inside ICE. You advised on cases. You helped train lawyers there. At that time, had you seen anything like this, a revolving door where someone would go make money in the client world as part of the private prison network and then come right back into the institution and be part of the government again? I mean, has that just been the way business has always been done?
No, it was you get your experience, you leave to the private sector once you are retiring, or you leave, but not necessarily come back. That is an odd choice for any administration to take someone back after they've already left. And one of the reasons is because the private sector has very different interests than the private sector, as we're seeing here, right?
Can you elaborate on that? So what happens if you have a profit motive that enters the calculus for whether immigrants get detained, whether they, whether they get scooped off of the streets, whether they're detained in a facility, whether they're deported? How does the profit motive affect those things?
It affects it so much because in the public sector, your loyalty is to the American people and to the Constitution. And when we see David Venturella's background, he worked for Secure Communities. He was one of the key players under the Obama administration, Secure Communities. That was an initiative to do information sharing with state and local officials. And so instead of going out to people's houses, on the streets, ICE was being funneled this information directly from state and local officials. That was ultimately shut down because not only were people being funneled in who had arrests, but victims who are calling, people who are going to the hospitals. And David Venturella was asked about this, and one of the things he said was, well, we don't control what information comes to us, but once information comes to us, they're going out there and they're arresting people. So he knows exactly the way the system works, how to manipulate it, and that was one of the reasons why he was chosen by GEO Company, because their whole system is getting people detained to fill up those beds, to get money, to make a profit.
I wanted to get your thoughts on, I'm not sure if you're still in touch with people on the inside of ICE, but on the outside of it, the organization obviously has an unbelievable reputation. People are openly calling for it to be abolished if you oppose the tactics that they're kind of deploying against people in this country. But what is morale like inside ICE, if you have any information on that? What do rank and file agents who worked in ICE, perhaps at one point in their career thinking they were in service of, immigration in this country, but now are seeing what their agents and other colleagues are doing? I mean, we talk a lot about the FBI and what morale is like in the FBI, and I'm wondering what people inside ICE feel like.
I think
are they conflicted?
I think it is. There's a lot of confliction. Morale is low. When you take the longtime government employees who went into the system believing in the Constitution, that is one side. But then you also have these new agents, these newer people who are coming in, and they're signing on, number one, for the financial incentives that they're getting, but also because they believe in this deportation culture, which is something that this administration is really cultivating. And so you see a split. You see people who have the ability to retire leave, the people who don't agree are trying to find other jobs, and then the people that are replacing them, the judges that are replacing the former judges that are being fired, that are leaving, they have this deportation culture where they don't believe that the Constitution applies to people in the United States who don't have status.
I want to ask you about a practice that the new Public Citizen Report highlighted, which was that detainees are being paid $1 a day to perform certain tasks and work. And this, to me, seems like just a relic from what you read about at prisons during the Jim Crow South. And there have been some controversies in recent years, too, about prisoners and being paid, you know, these meager wages. But do you remember, is this a longstanding practice that detainees are expected to work for such a meager salary?
The difference that we're seeing now is that not only are people being detained, like more people are being detained, but they're being detained for longer periods of time. And so I had a person who was detained for 2.5 months unlawfully. And during that month, during those 2.5 months, he was the main breadwinner for his family. So when he left, he had to get 2 full-time jobs just to make up for what he didn't work. At the same time, people who are being detained, they're told, if you work, this will reflect better for you for release or for something like that. And so they're really playing on that incentive. It's not just the $1 a day. It's more the incentive of, if I do this, I will be able to get out, knowing full well that no judge is going to really consider that. And so I think when going back and looking, this is something new because people hadn't been detained for this long, as we're seeing right now.
The other thing that I think a lot of people don't know about how this works is that often the little bit of money that you make, you end up having to spend at the commissary in the facility. The food is often so poor, grown adults not getting enough nutrition, so they feel the need to pay for these overpriced foods that they're then offering. And that's basically what you just like slaved away for essentially all day for about 12.5 cents an hour. And then also add to that the fact that say you want to be in touch with your loved ones, they're charging people like an arm and a leg to just make a video call to talk to their child after school. You know, they're making money like hand over fist, but also in all these other little ways that I don't think the American people are very aware of.
Right, and this is civil detention. There is no crime. They're not detained because they're being punished for something they did. The aim of detention in immigration law is for public safety and to ensure that they're going to show up for their hearings. So when you take that out of the equation, there really is no reason why they should be paid $1. There have been lawsuits in Washington where detainees have actually won because they were being paid the $1 an hour. So this is something that we will see being challenged more and more.
All right, Veronica Cardenas, thank you so much. Great to see you as always. Really appreciate it.